Wait a minute, this movement seems to have life.
One of the things that fascinates people about the aliens, I think, is that they're so alien.
It just sparks people's imaginations.
They're just this relentless machine of reproduction and murder.
Because we don't understand how they work and what they do and why they do it, it's compelling. You want to find the reasons.
All science fiction, when you write it, it's supposed to have science as part of the makeup. It needs to be sort of an integral part of the story. You always ask in science fiction, what if or how come? And so when I do these things, I look at them and say, okay, well, I want to know.
Is this going to be a stand-up fight, sir, or another bug hunt?
All we know is that there's still no contact with the colony and that a xenomorph may be involved.
Xenomorph literally means strange shape or alien form.
This can also apply to really animals on this planet as well. For example, there are life forms at volcanic openings underwater. There are a class of xenomorphs that get their energy from the volcanic heat and really mimic the most outlandish scientific comic book that you could find. The way in which the alien reproduces is not at all unfathomable or unlikely.
It goes through different life stages, like a moth.
The alien comes from a queen which has an ovipositor, that is a device on the abdomen in which eggs are laid down. The eggs then have a middle larval stage that we recognize as the facehugger stage. The facehugger deposits a larval entity into the host. The humans will incubate this larval until it develops into an immature alien and then erupt from the body. In many ways, the alien reproductive means is far less disgusting than what we see in the natural world. There are many examples in the insect world in which eggs are laid in a host. The host then serves as the incubating agent for a larval stage, and then the mature or the final entity then emerges.
Kind of like wasps will sting a spider and then lay eggs in it, and they hatch out later and eat the spider from within.
The alien is driven by one force and one force alone. That is the propagation and continuation of its species.
They are hardwired into breeding in a certain fashion that limits their ability to change. It's also presumed, however, that maybe the alien does have these qualities, that by finding a host with a common genetic characteristic, that perhaps there are codes of genes in the host that the alien can adopt into their own nuclei so that they can also adapt.
The first one that comes to mind is the alien that was on Furina 161. It was born of a dog. And the alien, once it was born, preferred a quadrupedal stance over bipedal. The best way to have that creature exist in a body is to force the body to create itself. I think what the facehugger is doing is it's actually depositing something that might be the equivalent of a virus within its host, and through the mingling of DNA from within the virus with the host DNA, it actually forces the host body to create an embryo.
The fact that the alien takes on some of the genetic characteristics of the host is not unlike a bacteriophage in nature, in which a virus actually can invade a bacteria and alter the genetic structure. So genetic swapping is not so far-fetched, and it's plausible, certainly in these extraterrestrial aliens. Bioweapons are certainly part and parcel of Alien versus Predator. And it's been speculated that the alien is really a bioweapon.
In the case of the aliens, what you have is they have developed their weaponry to the nth degree.
You've got these creatures with acid for blood, and basically every part of their body is sharp or claws or teeth. One of the worst things about them is you can't kill them, in the sense that if you kill them, you may open yourself up to a whole other problem.
It's got a wonderful defense mechanism. You don't dare kill it.
They never talk about exactly what acid is. It would have to be something fairly potent, hydrosulfuric or something that would just really cook.
Based on what we've seen of this fluid when it comes into contact with skin, it seems very consistent with hydrofluoric acid. A little bit of hydrofluoric acid introduced to living tissue can very quickly cause systematic toxicity. It also causes liquefactive necrosis. Not only is it corrosive, but it's physically deadly.
The alien has this incredibly acidic blood. And so it raises the question, why isn't the alien consumed by its own blood if it's that acidic? And the answer may lie in the same way our stomach is protected from degradation from our own stomach acids. We have a lining in the stomach that protects the cells underneath it from the very acids being secreted by other cells in the stomach. And in the same way, perhaps the alien has a secretory means by which to encapsulate the blood and therefore protect the entity from this very acidic blood. The alien appears to have an exoskeleton.
Exoskeletons are essentially a dense, hard exterior structure that holds this internal circulatory fluids, internal organs in place. In order for the exoskeleton to be resilient and resistant to its internal fluids, we would need to introduce something like fluorine, because hydrofluoric acid reacts to everything except fluorine and fluorine compounds. The incorporation of fluorine could even go further in that the alien may also be producing polytetrafluoroethylene as connective tissue, which is essentially Teflon.
Their body's essentially like a glass jar that can hold this stuff without melting.
The exoskeleton generally limits mobility, and yet we find the alien doing things that suggest an endoskeleton or an internal skeleton like we have. So it's possible that the alien might have a combination in which the upper torso is exoskeleton for defense, and that the lower part of the body may be more of a traditional endoskeleton entity, which allows legs to be flexible, move in spaces that it could not normally do if the entire skeleton were exo. The alien seems to have a mouth within a mouth.
It's a thing that comes out of their mouth with big old teeth on it, and that's usually the last thing you see.
This is not so far-fetched. In fact, there are moray eels that possess something known as a pharyngeal jaw. That is, the moray eel, when hiding in coral, will open its mouth and then send out another pair of jaws that have teeth that will grab a prey item, draw it back down into the throat, and then the other mouth will close.
Come on! Come and get me, you fucker!
The alien doesn't have any eyes, but it seems that the entire head would be used as a means of acquiring sensory input.
We always thought of it as the way same way that sharks sense prey. They actually can detect bioelectric fields. So even though sharks have eyes, they can, in a completely dark water, still sense prey by picking up its electrical field.
We see instances where the alien just seems to know where a threat or a prey is. On LV-426, Drake passed an alien. The alien stood up and turned to face him. It knew where he was.
We don't have to go too far to imagine ourselves as predators, in which we don't always use our eyes, but we sense vibration. We can smell. We can detect animals really close to us, and we detect this as a threat.
I think the biggest weakness that the aliens have is that they're stupid. The aliens are about as smart as a dumb German Shepherd.
They are only creatures of instinct and that they don't have the ability to go outside their program.
You don't need to be very smart. And they're hive minds, so you only need to have one smart one in the whole bunch, and that would be the queen. And she basically is the brain. She runs everybody around, and they do what they're told.
You can stay one step ahead of them by, once you know what they do, they're not going to do anything different than that.
The way that they get beaten in all the movies is that people are smarter than they are.